Well, and it's actually finally on the water. Pretty Swell has hit the water and is going to be going to Falmouth today. More on that in a minute. But here's our pretty boat. And notice that we are here in New England, and you may not be able to see it, but there's frost on that windshield. Were boats made to have frost? We'll find out. Welcome back to our channel, where we tell you about the real-life adventures of an owner of a Beneteau Antares 11 fly. Ours is named Pretty Swell. As I've mentioned in previous videos, we're having a Seakeeper gyroscopic stabilizer installed in it to make it more comfortable for Judy, who doesn't really love motion sickness. This video is all about the installation of the stabilizer. Since our boat didn't formally get commissioned and handed to us in fall 2023, this ride on the boat to Falmouth is the first ride I've had in our new boat. There we go, on our way. Buzzards Bay, clear as a bell, calm water. Still running a little late. You can see the water going by the stanchions, but beautiful day, and transit right through. Taking Broadway. And after about a lovely 30 minutes on the water, we arrive where we're headed. Falmouth Harbor has a long marine history, with the first known settlers being the Wampanoag tribe. It's also where some of the first boats from Europe set their anchor because of its natural protection. It's a super popular place today and the home of one of the best marine service companies in Cape Cod. So I flew my fancy new drone over and found where they're going to put the boat, which is right inside that gray thing back there, to work on it. And so here we are coming into Falmouth Harbor. Dropped the boat off on McDougall's right across the way. Turned out to be a beautiful day to make this run. We actually had to secure it pretty well because there was quite a hard blow that was going to come through in a day or two before McDougall's had a chance to get the boat out of the water. I'm going to ask your forgiveness for the next session of audio. We're inside of McDougall's and it's in the paint shop and there's a lot of noise. So here we are. It's mid-January 2024. And we're here at McDougall's in their paint shop, where Pretty Swell is, I'm trying to talk over the sander over in the back, but where we're here to talk about how we're going to put in the Seakeeper 3 that is ordered. There it is, ready to go when it gets in. There's plenty of space down here for a Seakeeper. The Lazarette is pretty big, and the Seakeeper fits nicely in there. In fact, it may fit all the way back there. We have to do some things. The water tank sits down there and some other things like that, so there's plenty of work to do to relocate a bunch of these things. But it is big enough. Once down in here, some of these systems might need to be moved, batteries and things like that, because we certainly need to have access to them while they're in here. So we'll see what they come up with for the installers. Other direction here, by the way, this is where the generator sits up in the front of here. So there's some space down and around in here to move some things, but there's plenty of stuff to do, and it takes about 6 weeks to get it all done. Just FYI, generator controls and some other things around in here that we'll go over when we do the commissioning meeting. And here's Tim. Say hi, Tim.
How we doing?
All right, so just to finish the little video we did before, we're sitting here in the paint room, and this is Pretty Swell, and you can see that they pulled off the Lazarette cover. Done all the great work to mask it all off to make sure that we protect the finishes. And then they pulled off everything down below for us to take a look at whether or not we should put the Seakeeper fore or aft, which was the big question. So tell us what you guys thought about it.
Sure. The first thing we did, as Jay mentioned, was take out all the existing components. There was PVC board and a water tank aft that we removed, along with all the batteries and components, to kind of see what kind of space we were left with and whether it made sense to put the genset aft or leave it in place and put the Seakeeper aft. After evaluating everything and looking further into the genset aft option, the genset's exhaust system was a little bit more complicated and didn't really make sense to move and reevaluate to put it aft. So the Seakeeper aft was the option we landed on, leave the genset in place, focus on making as much space aft as possible, using it super efficiently to leave room for one extra battery along with all the pre-existing ones, and then really keep the water capacity as high as we were able to, which was a priority that Jay and his wife definitely wanted, to be able to cruise with that water capacity. So we're pretty sure we're going to be right on the money, or maybe even plus a few gallons, with a custom water tank that we'll fabricate after the Seakeeper gets in place, and then we'll get enough room to put all the batteries. Hopefully, same thing in this aft LAZ area, tucked around after we get the Seakeeper and cradle in place.
We'll know more about that after you get it done. We may have to move the batteries inside, he said, but we'll see what we can do. Tell me just a little bit about, you talked about just now about a cradle, and that was a new discovery for us in the process of doing all the prep work for this.
It was. Tri-Seas, who is I think, elite Seakeeper dealer down in Florida, does a great job and had recently done this project on the same boat. So they make a custom cradle, Tri-Seas, and it's a metal cradle that we'll be able to mount on wedges back in the aft bilge, and then utilize that to tie into the structural component of the boat, and allow us to kind of efficiently use that space for the Seakeeper 3 install.
Awesome. And the custom water tank will fit behind the Seakeeper, you think?
Yeah, there's a kind of drop down in the hatch all the way aft.
I'll get some footage of that in a moment
the LAZ, but we're going to tuck the water tank there. So we'll kind of get the Seakeeper up until that drop down, right about centered in that space, and then leave enough room for the custom water tank right after that, which looks like we'll be right around the same amount of gallons as previously had.
And then you said something about the height the Seakeeper needs to be in the LAZ here. What's that about?
The Seakeeper precesses forward and aft, which is what gives the side-to-side torque to stabilize the boat, and it needs to be high enough in the cradle to be able to precess and swing. So that's what the cradle will allow us to do, and we'll build the wedges up so it mounts perfectly and gives enough room to precess as it needs to.
Nice, okay. And so you'll just take the cradle and bond it to the bottom, and then the Seakeeper mounts on that, and we'll transfer everything over. So great.
Yeah.
And so you think it's going to take a month, a little more, something like that, to do all the work?
Yeah, it'll probably be another week or so until we, get the cradle and remaining parts, and then we're hoping in 2-3 weeks to get the Seakeeper in place, launch the boat at sea trial, get the necessary Seakeeper sea trials, and go from there.
Awesome. So thanks, that's great.
Yeah.
Appreciate the info, and hopefully this is helpful to anybody else that wants to put a Seakeeper in.
Here we are at McDougall's Cape Cod Marine, jumping aboard Pretty Swell to check in on the Seakeeper refit update. We've got the cradle and the template plexus in place. Carpenter and team did an awesome job getting it in there, just finalizing the cleanup, but you can see the gap is taken up by the plexus, the permanent glue, and getting that in place to be ready to receive the Seakeeper soon. Thanks so much.
And here it is, fully installed. Without the cover on, there's a cover that goes on to protect all that. And then there's the one big surprise. It turns out we need to add one battery to the 5 that come with the boat, and making a total of 6, and they need to be accessible. The only way to do that turned out to be to mount them around the Seakeeper, so there are 6 batteries taking up a lot of the extra space inside the Seakeeper. In addition, we needed to wire them in parallel so that when the Seakeeper is spinning up with all the amps that it takes, all the batteries can be engaged in spinning up the Seakeeper, which can be a challenge. It puts a load on the boat. So that's a big impact. And then, of course, there was one oops. Look at that loose wire back there. That's on the inverter for the generator, and we think that's the ground wire. And we didn't pick up the fact that we need to move that inverter in order to be able to access it after the Seakeeper's installed. Look at this little tiny space. Nobody can get back there. So we're going to have to do a project of figuring out where to move that inverter, still having the proper clearance and still making it accessible in order to reconnect everything and make it serviceable in the future. That's another project for McDougall's. And then it was time for the sea trial. I wasn't there for that, but it was a pretty nasty day. Tim's driving here, and watch him turn on the Seakeeper and then look at that graph of the roll in the boat, and then watch what happens after the Seakeeper's engaged. Watch as it zooms in, and look how that pretty vicious roll turns into a pretty small little bit of stuff on the boat. That's exactly what we were looking for. Perfectly stable boat. Well, and I guess that's the story, isn't it? Everything in a boat is a trade-off. You don't always get everything in one boat. You got to change this to have that. In this case, having the Seakeeper takes up a lot of room in the Lazarette, and you more or less lose the Lazarette as a storage location. You get to have it for
maybe your short power cables and something else like that, but most of the rest of it's taken up. Well, on the other hand, what you get is a very stable boat, and in my case, a very happy wife. So, it's nice that you got to see that sample video from McDougall's when they did their Seakeeper trial. Coming up in future videos, we'll show you how it looks for us. In the meantime, we do have the boat now, and next video will be all about the handover ceremony and some of the little things I've been tweaking on the boat ever since then and what some of our first experiences were. So now finally we get into the real adventures with Pretty Swell. Thanks for watching. Be sure and like and subscribe to keep up to date with more videos as we go through the summer. And thanks again for listening. Bye.